Hello world, welcome back to the Razor RC, and today we're going to be doing the full review of the Team Associated B6.3 team kit. So this has been out for a few months. I've been driving it at my local carpet track, and I just want to share my thoughts as well as my opinions on this vehicle in a bunch of different categories. The way this works is we do a little rating from 1 to 5 stars in 6 different categories. We're going to be talking about the build, the design of the vehicle, the performance, of course, durability, which is always important, support and maintenance, value, and finally a conclusion on how I think this buggy works overall. So the ratings are from 1 to 5 stars. 3 stars would be an average rating as compared to its competitors. So all my reviews, all my ratings are based on what else is out there in the market. So this is a 10 scale 2-wheel drive electric buggy. Competitors of this are going to be like the TLR 22 5.0, which I have, something like an X-Ray XB2, Schumacher, Cougar LD2, which I also own. So there are a lot of 2-wheel drive buggies out there. Probably the most popular racing class, and the Team Associated B6.3 I think is the most popular within that class. They probably sell more 2-wheel drive buggies than everybody else combined, especially here in the United States. You can't throw a rock without hitting a B6.3, so definitely something super popular. Now this buggy does come in 2 flavors. The B6.3, which I have, that is the carpet and AstroTurf version. Also comes in a B6.3D, which is their dirt version, really intended for like indoor clay, maybe outdoor dirt, a little bit lower traction surfaces. So pick the one that matches the type of track you run at. Certainly on the AstroTurf and carpet type tracks, this one is better suited. Main differences between the two, of course, the dirt version is going to have lighter springs and shock oils. I think the pistons are slightly different. Typically, the carpet's got 2 by 1.6 in the front, and I think 2 by 1.8 in the rear, and then the dirt usually have 2 by 1.7 in the rear. The dirt's going to have a ball differential in the transmission, whereas the carpet version is going to have a gear differential. The carpet one also has a steel ESC tray, whereas the dirt version has an aluminum one. And then the dirt version also has different transmissions, kind of a layback, which moves the motor, everything back, a few millimeters. And then this is kind of the regular laydown, which comes on the carpet version. But the dirt version comes with both transmissions so that you can pick. Probably missing some other things. I think the bodies might be slightly different. The chassis on the carpet version is 3 millimeters longer, what they call the plus 3 millimeter version. And then the dirt version is kind of the standard chassis or 0 configuration. So those are the main differences between those types of vehicles. So this is obviously an update to the B6.2. They did make some changes, especially on the front end. Main changes are going to be the chassis mounted servo in the front. They did redesign the shock towers a little bit. They do have more spacing for the different shock positions. Did change kind of this shock tower protector. The upper brace is slightly different. I think that's mainly it for the rear. The front end. The side rails are slightly different because of that different mounting position for that servo. Rear end is again the other major changes. They did kind of widen the rear pivot. I think 1.5 millimeters per side. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. It does have the 69 millimeter drive shafts, which kind of keeps it a little more straight, not quite as angled, and the 73 millimeter arms to accommodate for that wider pivot. So yeah, those are the main changes to the vehicle. They did make some minor changes to like the wing mount. The rear shock tower is slightly different. I think the fan mount has been slightly reconfigured, but overall this is probably one of the lighter differences. They did change the slipper spur gear to kind of the same as the B74.1 Octolock type slipper pad configuration, but yeah, overall fairly minor differences from the B6.2. They do drive very similarly. I wouldn't say it's a huge change, but we'll talk about that more in the performance. But yeah, that's kind of an overview of the Team Associated B6.3. So my particular kit does have some option parts. I'm running a Savox 1267 SG servo, Hobbywing XR10 Pro stock spec ESC, kind of this clone of a Sandwell receiver, the ARX 482R. Works totally fine. quite a bit cheaper than a real SAMWA receiver. Gens Ace Redline battery, an Actinium 17.5 turn V4 motor. And yeah, so overall, those are my electronics. In terms of option parts, I am running a steel hinge pin brace basically up front. Nothing different in the steering rack, just an aluminum servo horn, something I always recommend on all the vehicles. And I think that's pretty much it. You know, this is a very, very stock vehicle. I think it runs pretty good out of the box. And that's all I've got going on there. First category we're going to talk about is the build. And Team Associated builds, you know, as compared to other builds out there, I think they're a little bit below average. The manuals are okay, but you know, a lot of other companies have improved their manuals. X-Ray has fantastic manuals. Schumacher has fantastic manuals. Japanese manufacturers tend to be a little bit worse if you're not a native Japanese speaker. So, you know, Team Associated is somewhere in the middle. I think the TLR manuals are a little bit better. There have been a lot of errors in Team Associated manuals in the past, I don't know, 3 or 4, maybe 5 kits I've built. They've all had sort of an addendum, you know, at published time they did have errors. So other things I don't like about the build, all the parts come on parts trees. Most other kits nowadays, you know, they come pre-trimmed, parts just kind of come in bags, but these, they come in bags, but you do need some flush cutters and trim out all your parts. Body and wing, you will have to cut out, you know, some other vehicles like the TLR stuff, they come pre-cut, which is super nice. So overall in the build area, you know, there are a couple other issues that they still haven't resolved. These sort of caster blocks in the front, they do need some filing. They're just kind of mismolded. Don't really, they're not really parallel arms here, so you do have to kind of file them down to get the steering blocks to move smoothly. And then the transmission, it is a 3-piece transmission, which is nice to get quick access to your differential. It's just like 5 screws. You just pull it out and you can get out your gear or ball differential. But these transmissions just don't fit together quite as well as I think other vehicles on the market. Certainly my Schumacher is quite a bit better. I believe the Yokomo is quite a bit better. The X-Ray is quite a bit better. So yeah, this kind of design, I don't know if it's the mold or design or what, you know, a lot of these inserts I think on the differentials aren't quite fitting quite as well. You know, you definitely will want to trim them, make them as clean as possible. They still don't spin completely smoothly. So in the build category, I do think this vehicle is below average. The Team Associated stuff, you know, I think the parts quality has been improving through the years. Certainly the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I've seen the parts and everything go together better, but the competition also has really good builds. So in the build category, I'm going to go with, I give a rating of 2 stars. I do think is below average. I do think most other manufacturers out there do have better kits that put together a little bit more nicely, a little bit less work, and then, you know, overall the Team Associated stuff is lagging a bit. Now in the design category, it is interesting. I've had more experience with other carpet type vehicles lately. So when this first came out, I did not have the Schumacher Cougar LD2, for example, and I did notice some improvements there that are a bit lacking, I think, on the B6.3. Overall design is quite good. I mean, they have pretty much every adjustment you could think of. Certainly, you know, adjustable shock mounting locations both on the top, on the bottom, adjustable hub heights, adjustable camber links, adjustable camber link locations. They do have these nice little carbon fiber steering arms. These are the +1 version, but they do make different versions to adjust your Ackerman. Down the middle of the vehicle, you do have a lot of weight options. You can get, you know, under servo weight and under ESC weight. You can move the battery around quite a bit. A couple different transmission mount locations, whether you want the forward mounted lay down or the, you know, sort of further back lay back transmission. Obviously different differentials, gear and ball differential. I think they even make like a 3-pad slipper, so if you want a little more slipper action, kind of an adjustable brace here for the waterfall, even a little turnbuckle that's included if you want to run like a turnbuckle brace to your battery strap. So a lot of adjustments again on the rear end. You got sway bars, the pivot, what do you call the inserts on the pivot blocks, get you different anti-squat, different toe, different track width, different arms, so tons of different adjustments. Even these hubs, you know, you can move the ball stud up, down, left, right, different hexes even. So tons of adjustments. Overall, the design I think is really good, but I think other brands, other vehicles out there have made some improvements that Team Associated hasn't quite addressed. You will notice that the kind of the weight bias on this is a little more further back, even with the lay down and the forward mounting battery positions. You can't get all the stuff quite as up front as some of the other vehicles that are more dedicated towards carpet and AstroTurf. I still don't like this battery strap. This thing's been around for, I don't know, a few generations. Probably one of the worst battery straps in my opinion out there. You do need like a tool, like a 7mm hex, what do you call it, nut driver to remove your battery strap. Kind of ridiculous. But yeah, they did make some small improvements. You know, the servo mounted chassis does make a little bit of difference. The steering is a little more precise, a little more consistent. Certainly geometry of this vehicle is quite good. Out of the box setup I think is really quite good. But in the design category, where I would have said it was a 5 before, I do think some of the other brands, the X-Ray, even the TLR2250 with a different battery strap mounting system, the Cougar with the kind of weight forward biased, does have adjustments, does have some modifications and differences and options that this does not provide. So in the design category, while I think it has tons of tunability, I think they are lacking in some areas. I think they're still above average, but maybe not quite as good as previous versions. The B6.2, for example, I think I rated a 5, but the B6.3, I'm going to rate a 4 in the design category because the competitors have kind of moved on and they really didn't make a whole ton of changes to this in the design. Next up, we have the performance of the Team Associated B6.3, and I've only run this on carpet. That's what my local track is, so I don't have a dirt version. I don't have a dirt track, so I'm really talking about performance of the carpet version. It's fast, it's easy to drive. I think the kit setup is quite good out of the box. I personally like kind of easy to drive setups. I don't like super aggressive, hard to drive, you know, super crazy steering up front. And this is a very nice neutral vehicle. I think the kit setup is quite good. All the work they've done to kind of get you a well-balanced setup. I think anybody could pretty much kind of pick up and drive and be fairly happy. You know, whether you're super fast, maybe you want some differences. It kind of depends on your driving style. But the kit setup and the performance is quite good. Shocks are pretty good. They do have the nice X-rings. I don't think you need the Kashima coated shocks and stuff. The springs seem well matched to this vehicle. The action is reasonably smooth. Some people like to polish the shock shafts or run the chrome shock shafts. I just kind of run the kit setups. They seem fine. Yeah, they're not super smooth, but they seem reasonable. Jumps and lands quite nicely. No weird kick up. Steering is good, but probably not quite as aggressive, and probably not quite as much opportunity to get like a really crazy amount of steering up front. The geometry on this is a little bit different. I don't think there's as much steering angle on these arms as some of the other vehicles out there. So yeah, it's easy to drive, but I wouldn't say it's particularly aggressive. So if you want something, you know, steering happy, this might not be the vehicle for you. But yeah, the performance is quite good. I do feel like for whatever reason, like the motor on this seems to run a little bit quicker than some of my other vehicles. So yeah, the transmission maybe not super smooth, but the vehicle overall seems to generate a lot of forward traction, a lot of acceleration. So that's pretty good. The oil bearings are again a nice feature. I don't think any other brand out there runs oil-filled bearings. Pretty much they're all grease-filled and don't spin quite as smoothly. But the oil-filled ones definitely free up the transmission, free up the the hubs and steering blocks a little bit more, so you do get a little bit more speed that way. So yeah, in the performance category, I'm going to get above average. I'm going to give it 4 stars. But I do think in the carpet arena, you know, maybe this is not the fastest vehicle out there. It's quite good, but maybe not the best. Durability has always been kind of a strong point of the Team Associated stuff. I've broken absolutely nothing on this vehicle. I mean, even the wing is still looking pretty good. The body's looking pretty good. Really nice and durable vehicle overall. The plastics seem totally fine. You know, I do tend to run like a aluminum or steel hinge pin brace on the bottom. I think that does add durability. Sometimes I run an aluminum camber block up front. I'm not on this, but nothing's broken so far. Kind of depends on how much you crash. I do tend to run sort of these set screws inside the camber block, so I do think that adds some additional durability. But yeah, overall, the Team Associated stuff has seemed to be pretty durable. I do think other buggies out there tend to be a little bit more fragile. Nothing's too bad nowadays, but Team Associated is probably the most tank-like vehicle out there. I'm going to give it full 5 stars in the durability category. Never really had issues with Team Associated stuff, and I've had every single buggy from the B5, the B5M, B6, 6.1, 6.2, finally the 6.3. So I've had pretty much every Team Associated buggy 2-wheel drive of the last, I don't know, 7 years or something like that. And this thing has been durable. I am quite confident it is a very durable vehicle. So no concerns, no issues in that area. Certainly has the beefy turnbuckle, is a little bit thicker than some of the other brands. It does have the shock towers mounted behind, the shocks mounted behind the shock tower, so that, makes them not get smashed up quite as much when you collide into things. So yeah, overall, I think it's a really durable vehicle, really good design in the durability area, and certainly one of the strong points. Support and maintenance is maybe not the most glamorous category, but I think it is important, especially in the past year and a half. A lot of companies have had difficulty getting parts. Certainly TLR has had trouble keeping stuff in stock for some of their race buggies. So it is nice to see Team Associated stuff is fairly easy to get, even in these sort of tougher times. I've had no issues getting parts. Things for the most part seem to stay in stock. Your local hobby shop, if they're carrying any sort of race kits in the US, certainly are going to carry Team Associated more than any other brand. So they are kind of the biggest brand here in the US, maybe not quite as big in Japan or other areas with other brands. I find that most countries tend to have kind of a local brand that's more popular, but Team Associated is probably the closest to like a global brand, certainly one of the biggest and longest standing vehicles in this area. So on the maintenance side, very easy to work on. It's got that split transmission, so a few screws you can get out the differential. Everything else is wide open. They even modified sort of these shock mounts on the bottom here. Now they just have to have little nuts you just kind of unscrew, so you don't have to pull out the whole ball stud or the whole screw or anything like that. So yeah, it's a really easy to work on vehicle. The servo comes out with like 2 screws. Everything is quite nice and accessible. The steering rack is not all like super crammed up like some other brands. So yeah, this is a very easy to work on vehicle. Parts are pretty much always in stock, and a lot of shops at your local store are going to carry Team Associated parts. So in support and maintenance, I think this is the easiest sort of buggy to own. I'm going to give a full 5 stars. Really nobody else better out there in my opinion on the racing side. So full 5 stars in support and maintenance. The B6.3 sells for $350 here in the United States. I think the D version is a little bit cheaper. I can't remember. There's like a $10 or $20 price difference. $350 is fairly inexpensive. Team Associated has always been kind of more on the budget side, even though they've made improvements to the vehicle, to the quality of the parts. For example, the TLR 2250 DC Elite is $370. The Cougar LD2 is $380. And then all these sort of European, Japanese brands like the X-Ray is $410, the Yokomo is $400. The Kyosho is slightly cheaper, the RB7 at $360 than those other brands, but it is kind of a dated design, and I'm not even sure they're still continuing to make those. They seem to be on sale everywhere. So the Team Associated stuff is certainly one of the cheapest brands, probably not, if not the cheapest of the major full-on race brands. So $350 is a good value. However, I do think you lose a little bit when you open up the box and kind of look at the contents. All the parts are still on parts trees. You do have to cut the body and wing yourself. It is kind of annoying in that perspective. I think parts quality maybe not quite as high end as some of the other brands out there. Certainly X-Ray has the best parts quality. Kyosho and Yokomo stuff tends to be pretty good. Even the Schumacher plastics and metals are quite good as well. So I think in the value category, while it is the cheapest, it's not necessarily the best bang for the buck. I'm going to give it above average score of 4 stars. I do think it is a good value, but maybe not the screaming crazy awesome deal it's been in years past. It's good, but they've raised their prices through the years, and other brands I think do have some advantages, and you kind of get a little more even though you're paying a little bit more. So my final thoughts on the B6.3, and I'll talk a little bit about whether I think it's really a major update from the B6.2. I did have a B6.2 that I ran at the same track, the same electronics and stuff. This does drive a little bit better. Things I've noticed differently is that I think the car's a little more consistent, a little bit easier to drive. The chassis mounted servo, does it make a big difference? No, not a huge difference, but it does make a slight difference. This thing is a little bit easier to put on the same location lap after lap as compared to the B6.2. The rear pivot, again, I think it just keeps the rear end a little more consistent. Doesn't roll quite as much. Maybe not quite as aggressive movement in the rear, but I think it's a little bit more stable. So overall, I find the buggy very, very easy to drive overall. Certainly a little more weight back than some other brands out there, but it makes for kind of an easy and sort of neutral type of vehicle. If you're new to RC, you're looking for your first two-wheel drive buggy, I think this makes an excellent choice, not just because of the way it drives or the price or whatever, but you're gonna have a lot of local support, a lot of team drivers. You'll be able to get parts, which is huge if you're new. You know, crashing and breaking things and not being able to drive is a huge bummer. So definitely having local parts support at local hobby shops and stuff is important. And then just, you know, any sort of question you may have about a Team Associated car, you know, pretty much everyone will be able to answer. There's tons of people out there that run this car, so certainly a good buggy for a new person. Now, in terms of the ratings, I did find that the ratings have kind of declined as compared to the B6.2. I think I rated the B6.2 higher in a few different areas. And it's not that this buggy is really any worse, but I do feel like they made hardly any changes, hardly any adjustments to this vehicle. It's pretty much the same as the B6.2, honestly. I mean, you can get a lot of these parts and mount them straight onto your B6.2 if you find that you need this stuff. But I do think other brands have kind of moved on. They've kind of improved things a little more significantly than the Team Associated, and I'm glad and happy I've been able to try more brands and other buggies out there, because I do think Team Associated just kind of rests on their laurels a little bit. I think there is still more room for improvement, and that's something I'm super happy to see, because the more competition there is with other brands, other buggies out there, and other people kind of pushing their game, it sort of forces everybody else to try to catch up, right? So Team Associated is a really good vehicle, and there's certainly nothing wrong with this at all. I don't hesitate at all in recommending this vehicle. In pretty much every category, it rates as well or better than most other brands out there, but it's not getting the full complement of 5-star ratings across the board like I think the previous Team Associated buggies have done in the past. And the reason for that is not that this is any worse, it's just that everyone's been improving their game, and because these scores are relative to what else you can buy on the market, that's why this is not getting a full 5 stars. But still an excellent buggy, 4 stars in nearly every other category. Certainly durability, this is probably the best buggy out there. And so yeah, excellent buggy overall, and I'm super happy to see that they have come out with this, and I'm looking forward to see what else they come out in the future. I will continue to buy Team Associated buggies because I think they are still one of the best buggies out there, and certainly kind of the standard by which other brands and vehicles are measured against. So those are my thoughts. What do you think about the Team Associated B6.3? Were you excited about this? Do you have one? Do you have questions? Do you prefer something else? Let me know in the comments down below. Also have links to all these parts and stuff that I use in my particular build. You can click on those. You don't have to buy anything you don't want, but it does help me out. And so if you like videos like this, you like reviews like this, that does help me out and help me produce more like these. So anyways, thanks for watching. Definitely hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Look for more videos soon. Take care.